Today is a review on mean, median, mode, range, and frequency tables. So we're going to start with a small set of numbers, and the mean is another name for the average. And to get the average, we need to add up all of the numbers and then divide by how many there are, which for this set is 7. So we can put that into the calculator or something, and we should get 6. We do that. The median is the middle number, and make sure the data is sorted before you look at the middle, and sometimes for small sets of data we can think about crossing numbers off the ends until we arrive at the middle, which is 5. The mode is the most common score. Just by looking at that, we should see it is 4. And the range is the highest minus the lowest, so the difference between the biggest and the smallest numbers, which in our case is the difference between 14 and 1, and they are 13 apart. Just a quick note on the median: if there's an even number of numbers, then when you get to the middle, there'll be 2 things in the middle. So you get those 2 things and you average them, and the median here would be 5.5. Okay, so it doesn't need to be actually a number in the data set. If you get 2 things in the middle, you might need to average them. Okay, sometimes bigger sets of data, it's displayed a bit like this, where rather than writing out every single score, you're keeping a count of how many times each score appears, and that count is called the frequency. So this first row here just means that there are 2 4s. This next row tells us that there are 4 5s. This row tells us that there's 1 6, and this row that there are 3 7s. So if we were to write it out, it look like this. All right, and as a first example, we might write them all out, but the whole point of these is that by displaying it in this way, we don't need to write it out, especially when there's a lot of numbers. Okay. So how would we work out the average, the mean? Right. Well, we could add them all up, but again, what if we didn't write it out? How could we do it that way, just by looking at the table? Well, if there's 2 4s, then the quick way to add 2 4s together, or 2 lots of 4, is to multiply. 4 times 2. And so that gives you 8. And likewise for the 4 5s, rather than add up 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, we could just multiply the 5 by 4, and we get 20. There's just a 6 there, so just 1 6. And there are 3 7s, which add up to 7 times 3, which is 21. Okay, and maybe those numbers on the right are quicker to add up. We can do that, and we get 55. And so after adding up all of the numbers, we need to divide by how many there are, right? And often the mistake we see is that when you just have the table, we say, well, there's 4 numbers, and it's not 4. It's because each of them appears multiple times. So what you need to do is look at how many times all of those numbers appear, and we add up the frequencies, and we see there's actually 10 scores in total, right? And so the mean must be the total, which is 55, divided by the number of scores, which is 10, and we get 5.5. Okay. All right, how about the median? Now, we'll start by bringing back the fact that we have 10 scores. This is important, because if you imagine, now we'll try not to write them out now, we'll try and imagine those 10 numbers written in front of us in a heap like that, and we want to work out the middle one. Right. But because there are 10 scores, we can hopefully see that this divides evenly into 2 lots of 5. So 2 sets of 5 scores. Right? And so the idea then is that the median will be halfway between the 5th score and the 6th score. Okay, because you have 5 numbers on the smaller end and 5 numbers on the bigger end, and the median should be halfway between the 5th and the 6th number. And so you can go across and count, so you know that there's the 2 4s there and the 4 5s, and so here's your first score, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, and so the median should be halfway between the 5th and the 6th, which is really just 5. Okay? So by counting the number of scores, we can locate where the median should be and then read down our frequency table to work it out. I'll show you this again, maybe with a slightly larger set of data. So it's the same setup, and the first thing to do would be to look at the frequencies and work out how many scores there are. And so this time, by totaling up those frequencies, we have a total of 15 scores. Right. And so again, we imagine that there's a whole heap of 15 scores in front of us. If we try and divide that by 2, we'll see that it splits into 7 and 7, except this time there's 1 left over, which isn't really a bad thing because that one will exactly be the median, right? It's going to be that 1 score sandwiched in the middle between the 2 7s, and what that's going to tell you is that the median is just the 8th score, because you have 7 on the left, 7 on the right, and the middle one is just going to be the 8th score after the first 7. Okay? And so what you've got to do now is count down the frequencies and work out what the 8th score is. Well, if you start counting the frequencies, you'll find that inside here we have 2 plus 1 plus 4, which is 7 scores, right? And so you have a bunch of 20s, a bunch of 121, and a bunch of 22s, and that's your first 7 numbers, which means your 8th number must be the first 23, right? And so the median is 23. Okay, so that's how you can make your way around these frequency tables. You want to look at the total number of scores, locate the median, and then count down the frequency column until you find the one you need. Okay, and so hopefully that's ringing some bells about the mean and median and mode and range and these tables. Okay, I'll put the work in Classroom, and I'll see you guys later, hopefully.